The massive alien ships appeared without warning above Earth's orbital station. Captain Marcus Chen watched through the observation deck's thick windows as the dark vessels blotted out the stars. Each ship was 3 times larger than anything humans had ever built. Their hulls gleamed with an otherworldly metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "My God," whispered Ambassador Sarah Williams beside him. "There must be 50 of them." Chen counted carefully. 63, he corrected. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his hands gripped the railing tighter. After 20 years in Earth's military, he had learned to stay calm when facing the impossible. The lead ship moved closer to the station. Strange lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that hurt to look at. Then, without any warning, a voice filled the station's communication system. It spoke perfect English, though the accent was unlike anything from Earth. Primitive inhabitants of the third planet. "I am Commander Vexthal of the Zephyrian Empire. You will prepare to receive me aboard your station. Resistance is not advised." The diplomats around Chen began whispering frantically. Ambassador Williams stepped forward to the communication panel. Her voice shook slightly as she replied, "We welcome peaceful contact with your people, Commander. Our station is prepared to receive your delegation." "This is not a request for permission," came the cold reply. "This is notice of my arrival." 30 minutes later, the station's docking bay filled with an otherworldly humming sound. A small ship, still larger than most human vessels, attached itself to the docking port with mechanical precision. The airlock cycled, and the first aliens humanity had ever encountered stepped onto their station. Commander Vexthal was enormous. Standing nearly 9 feet tall, his body was covered in what looked like living crystal. 4 arms extended from his torso, each ending in hands with too many fingers. Bioluminescent patterns glowed beneath his skin, shifting from blue to red as he moved. Behind him came 6 similar beings, though smaller and with different crystal formations. The alien commander's eyes swept the assembled humans with obvious disdain. When he spoke, his mouth didn't quite match the words coming out. Chen realized they were using some kind of translation device. "I am Commander Vexthal of the Zephyrian Third Conquest Fleet," the alien announced. His voice echoed strangely in the docking bay. "I have come to inform you of your planet's new status within the Empire." Ambassador Williams stepped forward, trying to maintain diplomatic protocol. "Commander, we appreciate this first contact between our species. Perhaps we could move to our conference room to discuss." "There is nothing to discuss," Vexthal interrupted. The patterns under his skin flashed bright red. "I will speak and you will listen. The Zephyrian Empire has claimed 847 worlds. Each submission followed the same pattern. We arrive, we explain the new order, and the native species accepts their place." Chen felt a cold anger building in his chest. He had heard this kind of talk before, from dictators and warlords who thought strength meant everything, but he stayed silent, letting the diplomat do her job. "Your species will surrender all weapons and military installations," Vexthal continued. "Your governments will dissolve. Your people will work as directed by imperial administrators. In return, you will receive the benefits of advanced technology and the protection of the Empire." "And if we refuse?" Ambassador Williams asked quietly. The alien's forearms spread wide in what might have been a gesture of amusement. "Refusal is not an option. The Empire has never encountered resistance that lasted more than 3 of your days. Primitive species that attempt to fight are simply removed and replaced with more cooperative populations." One of the other diplomats, a young man named Peterson, stepped forward. "You're talking about genocide." "I am talking about efficiency," Vexthal replied. "The Empire values useful populations. Those who cannot adapt to imperial rule are, by definition, not useful." Chen watched the alien commander carefully. Vexthal moved with the confidence of someone who had never lost a fight. The way he stood, the way he gestured, even the way his bioluminescent patterns pulsed. Everything about him screamed superiority and control. "I have conquered worlds with populations in the billions," Vexthal said, his voice growing louder. "I have faced species with technology your planet cannot imagine. I have broken the will of civilizations that had fought wars among the stars for thousands of years. And now I stand before the most primitive species I have ever encountered." The alien took a step closer to the human delegation. "Your ships are crude metal boxes with simple chemical propulsion. Your weapons fire small metal projectiles. Your planet has not even unified under a single government. You are children playing with toys, and I am offering you the chance to join the adult galaxy. Ambassador Williams tried once more to maintain diplomacy. Commander, surely we can find a peaceful solution that respects both our people's sovereignty. Sovereignty? Vextal's laugh was like breaking glass. You speak of sovereignty? Your entire species numbers less than 8 billion. The Empire controls quadrillions of lives across the galaxy. You have nothing to offer except labor and resources. The alien commander stepped directly in front of the human delegation. His massive form cast a shadow over them. I have been patient because this is your first encounter with superior beings. But my patience has limits. Your species has one choice. Submit willingly and join the Empire as productive citizens, or resist and face extinction. The bioluminescent patterns under his skin brightened to an almost painful intensity. Primitive humans, you will submit to Zephyrian rule. Your species will kneel before the Empire's might. The docking bay fell silent. Chen could hear the hum of the station's life support systems, the distant sound of someone breathing too fast, the soft electronic beeping of monitoring equipment. The other humans looked terrified, overwhelmed by the alien's presence and his casual discussion of genocide. But Marcus Chen felt something different. He felt the same cold rage that had sustained him through the colony wars, when pirates had threatened civilian settlements. The same stubborn fury that had driven him to fight impossible odds before. He had seen bullies who thought size and technology made them invincible. He had watched them learn otherwise. Chen stepped forward, moving past Ambassador Williams and the other diplomats. He was a full 3 feet shorter than the alien commander, but he looked up into those inhuman eyes without flinching. "Commander," he said quietly, his voice carrying clearly in the silent bay, "I appreciate you taking the time to explain your position so clearly." Vextal's head tilted slightly, apparently surprised that one of the humans was addressing him directly. Chen's weathered face remained perfectly calm as he continued. "You say we'll kneel before your Empire's might. I want to make sure I understand your position correctly." "You understand correctly, human. Your species will kneel." Chen nodded slowly, as if considering this carefully. Then he looked directly into the alien's glowing eyes and spoke in the same quiet, controlled voice. "You'll kneel when your legs are broken." The silence that followed was deafening. Vextal's bioluminescent patterns flashed through colors Chen had never seen before. The other aliens behind their commander shifted nervously, their own patterns flickering in apparent agitation. Ambassador Williams grabbed Chen's arm. "Captain, please!" But Vextal held up one of his 4 hands, stopping her. The alien commander stared down at the human who had just threatened him in front of his subordinates. For a long moment, the only sound was the station's ambient noise. Finally, Vextal spoke, his voice colder than the vacuum of space. "Did you just declare war on the Zephyrian Empire?" Chen's expression never changed. "I declared the truth, Commander. Nothing more, nothing less." The aliens' patterns blazed so bright they cast harsh shadows across the docking bay. "Then you have chosen extinction over wisdom. The Empire will remember this moment when your cities burn." Without another word, Vextal turned and strode back to his ship, his subordinates following quickly behind. The airlock sealed, and the alien vessel detached from the station. As the alien fleet began to withdraw to a higher orbit, Ambassador Williams turned to Chen. "Do you realize what you've just done?" Chen watched the alien ships repositioning themselves above Earth. "I told a bully the truth," he said simply. "Sometimes that's all you can do." 3 days after the failed diplomatic meeting, Commander Vextal stood aboard his flagship's command bridge, studying tactical displays of Earth. The planet hung below them like a blue and white marble, deceptively peaceful. His bioluminescent patterns flickered with controlled irritation as he reviewed the intelligence reports. "Status report," he commanded his tactical officer. "Sub-Commander Kethvar." "The pacification fleet is in position, Commander," Kethvar replied, his own crystalline form smaller and less decorated than his superiors. 63 vessels, standard conquest configuration. Energy shields at maximum, plasma batteries charged, boarding pods ready for deployment. Vextal nodded. It was the same fleet composition that had conquered the last 47 worlds. More than enough firepower to reduce a planet to lifeless rock. But the Empire preferred to leave infrastructure intact when possible. Dead worlds generated no resources. "What do our sensors tell us about their defenses?" he asked. "Primitive in the extreme, Commander. Their orbital installations are unshielded metal constructs powered by basic fusion reactors. Their weapons appear to be kinetic projectiles and simple explosives. We detected no energy shields, no plasma weapons, no particle beams. Another officer, science specialist Irendal, added her analysis. Their largest military vessels mass approximately 1/20th of our smallest cruiser. Their technology appears to be roughly equivalent to what the Alterans possessed during their pre-spaceflight period. Vexthal's secondary arms gestured dismissively. The Alterans surrendered before we fired a single shot once they comprehended our capabilities. These humans seem to lack even that basic survival instinct. He moved to the central command station, where a three-dimensional hologram of Earth rotated slowly. Red markers indicated human military installations, blue markers showed population centers, and green markers revealed resource extraction sites. Their response to our ultimatum was instructive, he continued. Instead of attempting to negotiate or offering immediate surrender, they began moving military assets. Their primitive ships are taking defensive positions around their planet. Should we be concerned, Commander? Asked Kethvar. The tactical analysis suggests they cannot possibly pose a threat to our shields. Vexthal's pattern shifted to deep blue, indicating contemplation. I am not concerned about their capability to harm us. I am puzzled by their behavior. In 847 previous conquests, we have never encountered a species that continued preparing for war after witnessing our technological superiority. The bridge's main display activated, showing intercepted human communications. The translation systems converted the various human languages into readable text, though much of it seemed to be coded military terminology. They call it Protocol Defiance, Irendal reported. From what we can determine, it appears to be a planetary defense plan they developed before our arrival. They seem to have anticipated the possibility of facing a technologically superior enemy. This information made Vexthal's patterns flicker with surprise. Most species they encountered had never imagined facing an interstellar threat. The concept of preparing for invasion by unknown aliens was almost unique in his experience. Show me their military leader, he commanded. The display changed to show Captain Marcus, Chen standing in what appeared to be a military command center. The human was smaller than Vexthal remembered, but his posture and demeanor remained the same. Calm, controlled, completely unafraid. This is the one who threatened me, Vexthal noted. What do we know about him? His name is Marcus Chen, Irendal read from her analysis. Age 52 standard years. Career military officer with extensive combat experience in what they call colonial conflicts. Apparently, these humans have been fighting wars among themselves for their entire recorded history. Kethvar's patterns showed confusion. They fight wars against their own species, while possessing such primitive technology. It appears so, Irendal confirmed. The historical records we intercepted show continuous warfare spanning thousands of years. They have developed extensive experience in what they term asymmetric warfare, fighting against superior forces using unconventional tactics. Vexthal found this information disturbing. The Empire had encountered violent species before, but they typically unified when faced with external threats. These humans seem to maintain their aggressive tendencies even when confronting annihilation. Begin the standard pacification protocol, he ordered. Deploy fighter squadrons to suppress their orbital defenses. Once we establish air supremacy, commence bombardment of military targets. Avoid population centers for now. We may still be able to salvage a useful workforce from this planet. The flagship's hangar bays opened, releasing swarms of small attack craft. Each fighter was larger than most human vessels and equipped with energy weapons that could slice through metal like air. Vexthal expected the human defenses to collapse within hours. Instead, he watched something he had never seen before. The human ships didn't retreat when faced with superior firepower. They didn't attempt to negotiate or surrender when their weapons proved ineffective against Zephyrian shields. Instead, they did something that made no tactical sense whatsoever. They rammed his fighters. Commander, Kethvar called out in alarm. The human vessels are engaging in collision attacks. On the tactical display, Vexthal watched in horrified fascination as human ships accelerated directly toward his fighters, using their own destruction as weapons. The humans couldn't penetrate Zephyrian shields with their primitive weapons. But the kinetic energy of a ramming attack was different. Physics worked the same way for both species. 3 fighters destroyed, 2 severely damaged, reported the tactical officer. The humans are coordinating their attacks to maximize impact damage. Are their pilots attempting to escape before impact? Negative, Commander. They are staying with their vessels through collision. Vexthal's patterns shifted to colors indicating deep confusion. Suicide attacks were not unknown in galactic warfare, but they were typically used only in desperate last stands by cornered populations. These humans were using them as opening tactics. Sir, another officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. Put it through. Marcus Chen's face appeared on the main screen. The human looked tired but determined. Behind him, Vexthal could see other humans working frantically at control stations. Commander Vexthal, Chen said calmly, I hope you're enjoying our warm welcome. Your pilots are committing suicide, Vexthal replied. This is not rational behavior, Chen's expression hardened. Those pilots volunteered for those missions. They knew exactly what they were doing. Each one of them chose to trade their life to make a statement. What statement could possibly be worth such waste? That we don't surrender, Chen said simply. That we don't kneel. That every inch of space around our world will cost you something, even if all we can take from you is time and ammunition. The transmission cut off, leaving Vexthal staring at a blank screen. Around him, his officers were reporting continued human attacks. The ramming runs had evolved into coordinated swarm tactics, with multiple human ships targeting individual Zephyrian fighters. Commander, Kethvar said hesitantly, perhaps we should escalate to full planetary bombardment. These humans appear to be defective. Vexthal's pattern shifted through several colors as he considered this. The Empire valued efficiency above all else. Prolonged resistance wasted resources and time. Standard protocol called for overwhelming force when faced with irrational opposition. But something about this situation bothered him. The humans weren't acting irrationally. They were acting according to a completely different set of values than any species he had encountered. They seemed to value defiance over survival, principle over pragmatism. Negative, he finally decided. We will proceed with the standard pacification. I want to understand what drives these creatures before we decide their fate. Over the following hours, the pattern continued. Human defenders used tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They abandoned disabled ships only after setting them to explode near Zephyrian vessels. They coordinated attacks that sacrificed multiple ships to destroy single fighters. They seemed to view their own lives as ammunition to be expended strategically. By the end of the day, Vexthal's forces had achieved complete orbital superiority, just as predicted. But the cost had been higher than any previous conquest. He had lost 47 fighters and 3 escort vessels to an enemy that shouldn't have been able to scratch his paint. As he stood on his command bridge, looking down at the planet that had just bloodied the nose of the Zephyrian Empire, Vexthal began to understand that this conquest might not follow the standard pattern after all. The humans had shown him something new, a species that fought not because they thought they could win, but because they believed surrender was worse than death. For the first time in his long military career, Commander Vexthal felt a chill of uncertainty about the outcome of a conquest. 6 weeks into what should have been a 3-day conquest, Commander Vexthal faced something he had never experienced in 847 previous victories, a growing sense of doubt. The human city of New Tokyo burned below his flagship, but the smoke rising from its ruins carried with it the stench of Zephyrian defeat. What was supposed to be a simple occupation had become a nightmare of urban warfare that made no sense, according to any military doctrine he knew. Status. Report, he commanded his increasingly nervous staff, sub-commander. Kethavar's bioluminescent patterns flickered with what Vexthal recognized as barely controlled anxiety. Losses continue to mount, Commander. We have lost 234 ground troops, 18 armored vehicles, and 6 atmospheric fighters. The humans have sustained approximately 10,000 casualties. Those numbers should indicate victory, Vexthal observed. We are inflicting far greater losses than we are taking. Yes, Commander, but... Kethvar hesitated, his patterns shifting to orange, indicating confusion. The humans do not appear to be concerned with casualty ratios. Every loss we inflict seems to make their resistance stronger rather than weaker. Vexthal moved to the tactical display showing New Tokyo. The city was a maze of rubble and makeshift fortifications. What had once been office buildings were now sniper nests. Shopping centers had become weapons factories. Even the subway tunnels had been converted into supply routes and ambush points. Explain, he ordered. Science specialist Irendal stepped forward with her analysis tablet. Commander, we have intercepted human communications that suggest they view casualties as martyrs rather than losses. Each death appears to motivate the survivors to fight harder. That is illogical. Dead soldiers cannot fight, but their deaths inspire living soldiers to take greater risks. We have documented cases where single human squads have engaged our companies in direct combat, knowing they cannot win but attempting to inflict maximum damage before being eliminated. Vexthal's pattern shifted to deep purple, indicating growing frustration. This was beyond his experience. Conquered species typically began seeking surrender terms once casualties reached sustainable levels. These humans seem to view death as just another weapon. What about their military infrastructure? Have we at least disrupted their command and control? Kethavar's patterns dimmed. That is complicated, Commander. The humans do not appear to rely on centralized command structures. When we eliminate their officers, subordinates immediately assume command. When we destroy communication facilities, they adapt using primitive methods like written messages and signal fires. Signal fires. Vextal's voice rose. They are using combustion as a communication method? Yes, Commander. Also drums, reflected light, and even trained animals. Their technology may be primitive, but their redundancy systems are extensive. A new alert sounded on the bridge. The tactical display updated to show an incident in the industrial sector of New Tokyo. Vextal watched with growing horror as a human engineer named David Kim executed a plan that defied all military logic. Kim had somehow gained access to a captured Zephyrian plasma rifle. Instead of using it to fight Zephyrian troops, he was using it to modify the city's main power distribution center. The human worked with desperate efficiency, rewiring alien technology to interface with their primitive electrical systems. What is he doing? Vextal demanded. Rendal consulted her instruments frantically. Commander, he appears to be creating a feedback loop that will overload the power grid. The resulting explosion will destroy approximately 12 city blocks, including our forward command post in that sector, Kethavar added grimly. Vextal opened a communication channel to his ground forces. All units in Sector 7, immediate evacuation. The humans are attempting to destroy their own infrastructure to eliminate our positions. But it was too late. The explosion that followed was visible from orbit. A brilliant flash that consumed David Kim, 300 human civilians, and 97 Zephyrian soldiers along with their equipment. The humans had turned their own city into a weapon. Commander, reported the communications officer, we are receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. Marcus Chen appeared on the main screen, but he looked different now. His uniform was torn and dirty. His face showed the exhaustion of weeks of constant fighting, but his eyes still held the same unwavering determination. Commander Vextal, Chen said calmly, I trust you observed Engineer Kim's demonstration. I want to make sure you understand what just happened. I understand that your species has a tendency towards self-destruction, Vextal replied coldly. Chen's expression hardened. What you just witnessed was not self-destruction. It was strategic sacrifice. David Kim was a father of 2 children who will never see him again. He was also a man who chose to trade his life for nearly 100 of your soldiers and a significant portion of your ground equipment. Your mathematics are flawed. 300 of your people died to kill 97 of mine. No, Commander. 300 of our people chose to die to protect 3 billion others. That's mathematics you'll never understand because you've never faced an enemy willing to pay that price. The transmission continued, and Chen's voice took on a tone that made Vextal's patterns flicker with unease. You see, we've been studying your tactics these past weeks. We've learned how you fight, how you think, how you approach warfare, and we've realized something important. What? You've never fought anyone like us before. All those 847 worlds you conquered, they were civilizations that valued survival over freedom. They calculated the odds and chose submission because it was the logical choice. Chen leaned closer to the camera. We are not logical, Commander. We are Americans, Russians, Chinese, British, Nigerians, Brazilians, Indians. We are humans from 200 different nations who have spent our entire history fighting each other over principles, ideologies, and beliefs. We know how to die for ideas that matter. Vextal felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. What are you saying? I'm saying that every city you attack will become another New Tokyo. Every human you kill will inspire 10 others to fight harder. Every victory you achieve will cost you more than the last one. Chen's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than a shout. You are not conquering Earth, Commander. You are bleeding to death on it. The transmission ended, leaving Vexthal staring at a blank screen. Around him, his officers exchanged worried glances, their patterns showing colors he had rarely seen among Zephyrian military personnel: uncertainty, fear, and something that might have been respect for their enemies. Commander, Kethavar said quietly, perhaps we should request additional forces from the Empire. This conquest is not proceeding according to standard parameters. Vexithal's pride rebelled against the suggestion. No Zephyrian commander had ever requested reinforcements for a primitive planet. But as he looked at the tactical displays showing human resistance spreading to dozens of cities, as he reviewed casualty reports that grew worse each day, as he contemplated the alien mindset that viewed death as just another form of ammunition, he began to understand that this was not a standard conquest. Draft a message to Imperial Command, he ordered reluctantly. Inform them that the conquest of Earth requires special considerations. As his staff began preparing the humiliating request for help, Vexthal continued to stare at the burning city below. Somewhere in those ruins, humans were already planning their next impossible attack, their next strategic sacrifice, their next demonstration that they would rather die free than live as slaves. For the first time in his military career, Commander Vexthal began to wonder if the Zephyrian Empire might have finally encountered an enemy it could not defeat. The humans were teaching him a lesson he had never needed to learn before. Sometimes the price of victory was higher than the value of conquest, and sometimes the enemy refused to pay attention to the odds. 6 months after the invasion began, the galaxy was watching. Commander Vexthal stood before a holographic display showing not just Earth, but reports streaming in from across the Zephyrian Empire. The impossible was happening. For the first time in Imperial history, a conquest was failing. Commander, Sub-Commander Kethvar reported with patterns of deep concern. We have received disturbing intelligence from Imperial worlds. The Alterans have begun what they call passive resistance. The Keltorans are refusing work quotas. 3 separate worlds have formally requested information about human military tactics. Vexthal's own patterns flickered through colors indicating frustration and something close to panic. The human resistance had done more than just cost him ships and soldiers. It had given hope to species that had forgotten what defiance looked like. What is the status of our ground forces? He asked. We control approximately 30% of major population centers, Kethvar replied reluctantly. However, that control is tenuous. The humans have adapted to our presence in ways we did not anticipate. The tactical display showed the grim reality. What should have been conquered territories were instead besieged zones, with Zephyrian forces holding fortified positions while human guerrillas controlled the surrounding areas. Every supply convoy required heavy escort. Every patrol faced potential ambush. Every building could hide snipers or bombs. Show me the latest intelligence on their technological adaptation. Vexthal ordered. Science specialist Irindal activated a new display that made his patterns flash with alarm. Commander, the humans have reverse-engineered captured weapons at a rate we previously thought impossible. They have combined their primitive manufacturing with our technology to create hybrid weapon systems. The display showed human factories that had been retooled in weeks rather than years. Primitive assembly lines now produced ammunition that could penetrate Zephyrian armor. Chemical explosives had been enhanced with captured energy components. Most disturbing of all, human engineers had figured out how to overload Zephyrian power cells to create devastating improvised explosives. Their learning curve is unprecedented, Irindal continued. Most species require decades to adapt to new technology. These humans are implementing changes in weeks. An alert chimed on the bridge. Commander, called the communications officer. Urgent message from Captain Chen. Marcus Chen appeared on the main screen, but he looked different now. 6 months of warfare had aged him, but he seemed stronger rather than weaker. Behind him, Vexthal could see what appeared to be a sophisticated command center, built from a mixture of human and captured Zephyrian technology. Hello, Commander, Chen said with a tired smile. I thought you should see what we've been working on. The display shifted to show something that made Vexithal's blood run cold. Human spacecraft, but not the primitive vessels they had destroyed months ago. These ships were sleek, deadly-looking craft that incorporated Zephyrian design principles with human engineering innovation. We call them hybrid fighters, Chen explained. Built using the manufacturing techniques we learned from your destroyed vessels, powered by modified versions of your energy systems, and armed with weapons that combine the best of both our technologies. Vexthal stared at the ships in disbelief. That is impossible. Your industrial capacity cannot support such construction. You're right about our limitations, Chen agreed. We can't match your production capacity, but we don't need to. We only need to build enough ships to make your occupation cost more than your conquest is worth. The transmission shifted to show launch bays where dozens of the hybrid fighters were deploying. They moved with an agility that pure Zephyrian craft couldn't match, and their attack patterns showed a creativity that Imperial doctrine had never encountered. You see, Commander, you made a fundamental error in understanding us. You assumed that because our technology was primitive, we were primitive, but humans have been adapting and innovating for thousands of years. We take what works, improve what doesn't, and create solutions you never thought possible. As if to demonstrate his point, the hybrid fighters began engaging Zephyrian patrol craft in orbit. The human ships used tactics that seemed impossible. Coordinated swarm attacks that treated individual fighters as components of a larger weapon system. They sacrificed ships to create openings for others, used damaged craft as guided missiles, and employed maneuvers that risked their own destruction to achieve tactical advantage. Impossible, breathed Kethvar as he watched the engagement. They are winning. It was true. The human hybrid fighters, despite being outnumbered 3-1, were systematically destroying the Zephyrian patrol. They fought with a combination of technical skill and reckless courage that the Imperial forces couldn't counter. How? Vexthal demanded. Chen's image reappeared on the screen. Because we fight for something you don't understand, Commander. You fight for an empire, for conquest, for the abstract glory of adding another world to your collection. We fight for our homes, our families, our right to exist as free beings. The human captain leaned forward, and Vexthal saw something in his eyes that he had never seen in 847 previous conquests. Absolute certainty of victory. But there's something else you need to understand. Chen continued. This isn't just about Earth anymore. Every day you continue this invasion, more species across your empire learn that the mighty Zephyrians can be fought, can be hurt, can be defeated. A new display activated showing intercepted communications from across Imperial space. Reports of work slowdowns, sabotage, and open revolt were streaming in from dozens of worlds. The symbol that appeared on many of these reports made Vexthal's patterns dim with shock. A crude drawing of a human fist. The galaxy is watching, Commander, Chen said quietly. They're watching the mighty Zephyrian Empire bleed itself to death against one primitive planet. They're learning that resistance is possible, that freedom is worth fighting for, that no empire, no matter how powerful, can stand against people who refuse to kneel. The orbital battle was ending. Of the 30 Zephyrian patrol craft that had engaged the human hybrid fighters, only 6 remained. They were retreating toward the main fleet, damaged and demoralized. You have a choice to make, Chen said. You can continue this invasion and watch your empire tear itself apart as every conquered world learns to fight like humans. Or you can acknowledge what you've learned here and find a different path forward. The transmission paused and Chen's expression softened slightly. I know this isn't easy for you, Commander. Your entire worldview is built on the idea that might makes right, that superior technology guarantees victory. But you've learned something new here. That the human spirit is a technology you can't counter with weapons. Before Vexthal could respond, alarms began sounding throughout his flagship. The tactical display showed something that made his patterns flash through every color in the Zephyrian spectrum. A massive human fleet rising from Earth's surface. Not the hybrid fighters they had seen before, but larger vessels, cruisers and battleships built with the same combination of human ingenuity and captured Zephyrian technology. Ships that shouldn't exist, created by a species that had learned 6 months of lessons and applied them with terrifying efficiency. Commander, Kethvar said with patterns of pure terror, they have achieved technological parity. Vexthal stared at the impossible fleet approaching his position. In 6 months, the humans had evolved from a primitive species with chemical rockets to a spacefaring civilization that could challenge Imperial forces. They had compressed centuries of normal development into half a year. The choice is yours, Commander. Chen's voice came through the communication system one final time. But choose quickly, because ready or not, we're coming. The communication ended, leaving Vexthal alone with the tactical display showing the approaching human fleet. For the first time in his military career, he faced an enemy that had learned to match him ship for ship, weapon for weapon, and soldier for soldier. But more than that, he faced an enemy that fought with something the Empire had never possessed, the absolute conviction that death was preferable to surrender. Commander Vexthal, conqueror of 847 worlds, was about to learn what defeat looked like. The final battle began at dawn over Earth's Pacific Ocean. Commander Vexthal stood on his flagship's bridge, watching the human fleet approach with a mixture of respect and dread he had never felt before. In 8 months of impossible warfare, these primitive creatures had evolved into something that challenged everything he believed about conquest and superiority. Fleet status: he commanded 37 vessels remaining operational. Sub-Commander Kethvar reported. His bioluminescent patterns showed the strain of months of losing battles. The humans are approaching with 43 ships of various classes. Vexthal studied the tactical display. The human vessels were a strange mixture of familiar Zephyrian design elements and alien innovations he couldn't understand. They moved with coordination that spoke of excellent training, but also with an unpredictability that made standard tactical analysis impossible. Commander, Science Specialist Irondal said quietly, "There is something else. The humans are broadcasting a wide-spectrum signal. They want the entire galaxy to witness this engagement." The implications hit Vexthal immediately. Win or lose, this battle would be seen by every species in Imperial space. If he won, it would be a hard-fought victory against primitives that should have been conquered in days. If he lost, "Sir," the communications officer called out, "incoming transmission from the human flagship." Marcus Chen appeared on the main screen for what Vexthal somehow knew would be the final time. The human looked tired but determined, standing on a bridge that blended captured Zephyrian technology with human engineering in ways that shouldn't work, but clearly did. "Commander Vexthal," Chen said with something that might have been sadness in his voice. "It didn't have to come to this. You could have surrendered," Vexthal replied. "Your species could have joined the Empire peacefully." Chen shook his head. "No, we couldn't, because surrender would have meant the end of what makes us human. The right to choose our own path, to make our own mistakes, to live free or die trying. And now you will die," Vexthal said, though the words felt hollow even to him. "Maybe," Chen agreed. "But even if we do, we've already won something more important than this battle. We've shown the galaxy that the Empire can be fought, that freedom is worth any price, that no one has to kneel unless they choose to." The transmission paused and Chen looked directly into the camera with those unwavering human eyes. "But Commander, there's something I think you need to understand. This isn't just about military victory anymore. This is about the choice between two different ways of existing in the universe." "Explain." "Your empire is built on the idea that might makes right, that superior technology and firepower can force submission. That's worked for you for thousands of years. But we represent something different. The idea that some things are more important than survival, that principles matter more than power." Vexthal felt his pattern shift through colors he rarely displayed. Uncertainty, confusion, something that might have been doubt. "Those are the thoughts of the weak." "No, Commander. Those are the thoughts of the free. And here's what you haven't realized yet. Freedom is contagious. Every species in your empire is watching this. They're learning that resistance is possible, that the choice between slavery and death isn't the only choice available." The human captain stepped closer to his camera. "We've both studied each other these past months. I know you're not evil, Vexthal. You're a soldier following orders, doing what you believe is right for your people, but you've learned something here that you never expected to learn." "What?" "That we're not so different. That humans can be just as brave, just as determined, just as willing to die for our beliefs as any Zephyrian. The only difference is what we choose to believe in." Chen's expression softened slightly. "You can end this, Commander. Not through conquest, but through understanding. Your empire doesn't have to be built on subjugation. It could be built on cooperation, on mutual respect, on the recognition that different species can work together while remaining free." For a moment, Vexthal considered those words. In 8 months of fighting these humans, He had learned more about courage, determination, and sacrifice than in his entire previous military career. They had shown him that strength came from more than technology and firepower. But 847 previous conquests, a lifetime of imperial conditioning, and the weight of Zephyrian military tradition were hard to overcome. "I have my orders," he said finally. Chen nodded sadly. "I understand." "Then let's finish this." The battle that followed was like nothing in recorded galactic history. The human fleet fought with tactics that combined everything they had learned: the reckless courage of their early resistance, the technological adaptation they had mastered, and the strategic thinking they had developed. Through months of impossible warfare, Vex Thal watched his carefully planned formations, torn apart by human ships that seemed to treat their own destruction as just another weapon. He saw Zephyrian cruisers disabled by coordinated attacks from smaller human vessels that sacrificed themselves to create openings for their allies. But the humans were taking losses too. For every Zephyrian ship destroyed, 2 or 3 human vessels died. The mathematics of warfare still favored the technologically superior force, until Captain Chen did something that changed everything. The human flagship, a hybrid vessel that incorporated the best of both technologies, broke formation and accelerated directly toward Vexthal's command ship. It was a ramming attack on a massive scale. The human commander was willing to trade his life and his ship for the chance to eliminate the Zephyrian leadership. "Evasive maneuvers," Vexthal ordered. But the human ship was faster, more maneuverable than Imperial doctrine suggested was possible. It closed the distance with deadly efficiency, its weapons blazing as it approached. At the last moment, when collision seemed inevitable, something unexpected happened. Instead of ramming, the human ship matched course and speed with the Zephyrian flagship. A docking tube extended from Chen's vessel to Vexthal's. "Commander," Chen's voice came through the communication system, "I'm coming aboard. It's time we settled this personally." Vexthal could have ordered his ship to break away, could have used his weapons to destroy the attached human vessel. Instead, he found himself saying, "I will meet you in the docking bay." 20 minutes later, Commander Vexthal faced Captain Marcus Chen in hand-to-hand combat aboard the Zephyrian flagship. The alien commander was larger, stronger, with 4 arms against the humans too. But Chen fought with the same desperate courage that had characterized human resistance from the beginning. The battle was brutal and personal. Vexthal's superior strength and reach gave him clear advantages, but Chen's experience in ground combat and his absolute refusal to surrender kept him fighting even when wounded. In the end, it came down to a single moment. Vexthal had Chen pinned, his 4 arms restraining the human while his powerful legs prepared to deliver a killing blow. But Chen, bloodied and exhausted, managed one final desperate attack. He grabbed one of Vexthal's legs and twisted with all his remaining strength. The alien commander's crystalline limbs snapped with a sound like breaking glass. As Vexthal collapsed, Chen managed to break the second leg before his own strength finally failed. The mighty Zephyrian commander, conqueror of 847 worlds, was forced to his knees by a primitive human who had kept his promise from 8 months before. "You'll kneel." "When your legs are broken?" Chen gasped, collapsing beside his fallen enemy. But instead of finishing his defeated opponent, Chen did something that shocked Vexthal more than any military tactic. He offered medical aid. As human medics worked to save both their lives, Vexthal looked up at his enemy and asked, "Why?" Chen, barely conscious, managed a weak smile. "Because this was never about hatred, Commander. It was about freedom. And free people don't murder the defeated." In the weeks that followed, as both commanders recovered in a human medical facility, something extraordinary happened. With their leader missing and their fleet badly damaged, the Zephyrian forces began negotiating with human representatives. Other species across the galaxy, inspired by the human example, began demanding their own negotiations for greater autonomy within the Empire. The rigid imperial structure, based on absolute submission, began to crack under pressure from populations who had learned that resistance was possible. 6 months later, Commander Vexthal stood beside Captain Chen at the signing of the Terra Accords, the first treaty in Zephyrian history that recognized the independence of a species they had attempted to conquer. "You were right," Vextal admitted as they watched representatives from dozens of species sign agreements for greater freedom within a reformed imperial structure. Freedom is contagious. Chen, still walking with a slight limp from their final battle, nodded. The universe is big enough for all of us, Commander. We just had to learn how to share it. The Zephyrian commander looked down at his own artificial legs, gifts from human technology that had replaced the limbs Chen had broken. In a strange way, they served as a permanent reminder of the lesson he had learned. Your species taught me something I never expected to learn, he said quietly. What's that? That true strength isn't about forcing others to kneel. It's about helping them stand.